Hello, my lovelies. How are you? So it's Sunday night, scary story time, which I look forward to every Sunday because Sundays fucking suck, really. Yeah, not a big fan of them. But this makes me a big fan of Sundays. Tonight we are going to do 10 gruesome murder cases you've probably never heard of. The reason I wanted to do these is because there's certain cases that we hear so much about, we literally know the whole freaking story. Well, I want to find out more about the ones that we don't really hear about. So, all right. There have been murder cases that have rocked the country, like murders of Lacey Peterson and John Benet Ramsey, but there are millions of other murders that never even make national headlines. How fucking sad is that? I mean, I know not everything is going to make it to the headlines, but you would think every murder would. Anyways, we rounded up some of the most gruesome and upsetting murders that you may have never heard of. A lot of these I doubt you have ever heard of, and they are creepy, okay? Let's just say that. They're really creepy. All right, let's turn this down just a little bit. All right, our first story is the Papin sisters, who murdered their bosses in cold blood. You would think that that's not such an uncommon thing. I think a lot of people want to murder their bosses, but you know what's different? A lot of people just don't go around murdering their bosses. That's what's different. French sisters Leah and Christine Papin worked as live-in servants for the Lancelin family in France in 1926. Although it was reported that they acted quite odd, never talking to anyone but themselves and showing very little interest in anything besides each other, they were like this. You know, twins are usually like this. Well, they were like that, like just tight, yo. According to they did their work quickly and lived with the family for almost 7 years. One night in February 1933, Mr. Lancelin, who had been waiting for his wife at a friend's house, came home to find her and their adult daughter, dead on the floor in a pool of blood. Their eyes had been gouged out and their faces were smashed in. Motherfuck, it takes an angry biatch to do that kind of shit. Don't you think? The Papin sisters were locked in their room, and after getting a locksmith to open the door, the police said that they found the sisters lying on the bed together with a bloody hammer nearby. The whole thing already is just creepy. I got goosebumps. It's giving me wacko vibes. The Papin sisters immediately confessed to the crimes. While in prison, Christine became very distressed from being away from her sister, Leah, and was eventually granted permission to see her sister. Reports said that the sisters seemed to be unnaturally close to each other, with some suggesting a sexual relationship, though doctors who examined the Papin sisters denied evidence of that. Something was definitely going on. They were more than the shit that you hear about twins in the first place. There was something there. A few months later, Christine suffered a mental breakdown. Go fucking figure. And tried to gouge out her own eyes. What the fuck does this lady have against eyes? Or maybe it's a soul, because the eyes are the window to the soul. I could be onto something. After their trial, Christine was sentenced to life in prison for being the mastermind behind the murders, while Leah was eventually released from prison in 1943, and she managed to get a job at a French hotel under a new identity. Fuck. It is believed that she died in 1982, but that has never been confirmed. What, so the bitch could still be alive? Are you fucking serious? So that was the Papin sisters for you, and I'm going to show you a picture. It's not much of a picture. It's an odd picture. Hopefully you can see that. Those are the sisters that like to gouge out eyeballs. She even tried to gouge out her own goddamn eyeballs. She probably gouged out Fredward's eyeballs. That's where they went, right? Oh, fuck. Okay. Calm down. Alright, next story. Alright. This story is called Acid Bath Murderer John George Hay. And this is him in all his glory. That dude right there. John George Hay was a British serial killer active in the late 40s. He used to dispose of his victims' bodies by burning them in sulfuric acid. according to a forensic magazine. Um, Hay was convinced he was getting away with murder, literally, because he mistakenly thought that without a body there was no crime. In a lot of cases, that's true, but not always. His arrogance is what ultimately got him caught when he led police straight to the remains of his sixth and final victim, 69-year-old Olive Duran Deacon. While on trial, Hay pleaded insanity and insisted to the court that he drank the blood of his victims. He was found guilty in 1949 and hanged a few months later. And people say there's no such thing as vampires. I would say that John George Hay, definitely a vampire. Elizabeth Bathory, that bitch was a vampire. You know she was. She had to have been. Anyways, the next case is Robert Berdella, the Butcher of Kansas. A lot of people that live in Kansas actually probably know about this story, but the rest of us around the country, we don't really know the story. So this is this guy, and I mean, how cliche. Look at them glasses. Look at that stash. You know, I don't want to stereotype or anything, but look at our serial killers from the past, you know, just saying. In the late 80s, Robert Berdella tortured and killed 6 men. He chopped their bodies into small pieces and stuffed their remains into dog food bags. Fucking gross, dude. According to the New York Daily Times, anyways. He also kept detailed notes on each of his victims, which later helped investigators prove their murders. Berdella almost got away with it all, had it not been for his 7th would-be victim, 22-year-old Christopher Bryson, who managed to escape from the 2nd floor of Berdella's home. He may have not been caught. Thank God he escaped and ratted this fucking creep out. So Berdella was originally charged with sexual assault, but after police obtained a search warrant, they found human remains and other wallets of other victims. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and died of a heart attack in jail in 1992. How shitty! He didn't really suffer, did he? Well, if you believe in heaven or hell, I'm pretty sure he went downtown. He's probably suffering now. So yeah. Our next case is Dennis Nielsen, who murdered young men and kept their bodies. This is a lot like Jeffrey Dahmer type of stuff, you know? I think that the link between all of these people is they're very fucking lonely. Well, and they're insane, but they're lonely. And they think by keeping parts of their victim or the whole body of the victim that these people will actually remain with them and they're no longer lonely. How fucked up. Get a fucking pet, dude. Okay, back to the story. Dennis Nielsen terrorized London in the late 70s and early 80s. He killed over 15 men over a 5-year period. Nielsen would pick up young men at bars, sounds a lot like Jeffrey Dahmer, and take them back to his home. There, he'd strangle or drown them. Once dead, he'd bathe and dress the bodies, according to the International Business Times. He admitted to police that he kept the bodies for extended periods of time before disposing of them so that he could have sex with them and talk to them. That's a lot like Jeffrey Dahmer. A lot. And, you know, I like to talk to Fredward, but it's in a whole, like, we got this, like, we just have great dynamic, you know? So we talk. Yeah, I can't believe how much that is like Jeffrey Dahmer's story. There's a lot of killers out there that had the same motif, if that's the right word. Yeah. He is currently serving a life sentence at the HMP Full Sutton prison in Yorkshire, England. Well, thank fuck for that, because that's where he belongs. Alright, the next one is Herb Baumeister, a serial killer who stashed bodies in his backyard. Jesus Christ, what's with everybody holding on to bodies? Okay, in the late 80s and 90s, Herbert Baumeister would lure gay men back to his pool house, then strangle them and dump them in the woods behind his home. According to People magazine, Baumeister had his pool area decorated with mannequins that were set up to seem like they were having a pool party. He was lonely. That's like the link between all these fucking people is they're lonely and nuts, psychotic. Okay. Baumeister's young son, Eric, even stumbled upon the remains of one victim while he was playing in the backyard. Once Baumeister realized the police were onto him, he fled to Ontario, Canada, and shot himself in the head at Pineria Provincial Park. In his suicide note, he blamed his failing marriage and business as the reason for his suicide and never confessed to any of the murders. Police estimate that he killed somewhere between 10 and 20 people. That's fucked. It's just fucked, right? Fucked. I'll show you the picture of old Herb Baumeister, but it's really blurry. I don't know if you can actually see that well, but that's the dude that liked to have pool parties with mannequins. Okay, Gertrude Beninsky, the torture mother. Ooh. I'm gonna show you her picture real quick, just because she's got one of those Karen face times 25. Yeah, that's her. Yep. All right, let's see what this bitch did. In 1965, police found the emaciated body of 16-year-old Indianapolis resident Sylvia Likens. Okay, this story I do know. It is very fucking sad. This lady is a total POS. Total. Sylvia was covered in cigarette burns and sprawled out on a filthy mattress in the home of 37-year-old Gertrude Brzezinski's, according to Indianapolis Monthly. Sylvia and her sister Jenny boarded with Beninsky because their parents were carnival workers and traveled a lot. The girl's father paid Beninsky, I can't even pronounce her last name, so I'm just going to say Beninsky, $20 a week in exchange for housing his daughters. If the money arrived late, and Beninsky took out her anger on the girls. Eventually, she focused all of her beatings on Sylvia alone. But this wasn't a crime of an adult beating on a child. Brzezinski was the mother of 7 children, all of whom lived in the house and partook in the violent and sadistic attacks against Sylvia. Neighborhood kids, some as young as 10, were invited to join in or watch, and no one reported anything. Nobody reported a motherfucking thing. This case makes me so fucking pissed off. In October of 1965, Sylvia was literally beaten to death. Brzezinski apparently forced a neighbor to call the police and tell them Sylvia ran away. When police arrived at the home, Jenny Likens, Sylvia's younger sister, apparently whispered to one of the officers, "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything." Brzezinski got 20 years in prison and was then released. She moved to Iowa, changed her name, and died of lung cancer in 1990. The others, who were mainly children, all got away with short sentences, if anything. That story pisses me off so fucking bad. Like, I could just wring somebody's neck. Oh, this pisses me off. It's terrible what they did to her. I watched the movie. I know there's a book about it. I started reading that, but I didn't finish it, and I watched the movie instead, and I was just, like, by the end of it, I was just enraged. Like, bullshit. Alright, the next case is Catherine Knight, who tried to feed her husband to his children. I thought I read that wrong, but that's what the fuck it says. That's real. That's real talk. Look at this bitch. Yeah. Uh-huh. Alright then. Catherine Knight, an Australian woman, stabbed her partner John Price to death 37 times in 2000. Knight then skinned him, decapitated his head, and cooked up parts of his body. She set her dining room table for 2 and served the cooked meat with baked potatoes and side vegetables. She placed handwritten notes next to each table setting with the names of Price's children on them. She was attempting to serve them their father for dinner. This bitch is beyond sadistic, okay? When police finally arrived at the house, they found Knight in a comatose state with pills spilled out on the floor. They also found Price's head boiling in a pot of soup on the stove. Knight was the first woman to be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. She is currently serving her sentence in Silverwater Correctional Complex in New South Wales, Australia. She's still alive, and this bitch boils heads and then feeds them to kids. I don't know if it gets more fucked up than that. Oh, I'm sure it does. anything that you can think of happening or whatever, it's happened somewhere in this world because it's just gross. See, after I do these, after I read these true crime stories, I almost have to watch a comedy. Otherwise, I'm just like full of fucking piss and vinegar and rage, and I just want to. Just calm down, Amber Ray. Calm down. All right. The next case is Jerry Brudos, the shoe fetish slayer. The shoe fetish slayer. Yeah, I read that right. Okay. In January 1968, women in Portland were terrorized by Jerry Brudos, a man who was alleged to have a foot fetish, and 4 vanished completely, according to the New York Daily Times. About a year later, a fisherman found the remains of a 22-year-old woman, Linda Saley, who had disappeared the year before. Police ended up finding 4 more bodies and eventually tracked them all back to Brudos. He confessed to the murders in gory detail to the police. After keeping the body of his first victim for several months in order to dress her up, he eventually dumped the victim in the river, but not before sawing her fucking foot off to use for trying on heels and taking photos of them. In another horrific find, detectives discovered that he would keep souvenirs of his crimes, including shoes, bras, girdles, and even a paperweight he made out of human tits. He has tits for a paperweight. I fucking can't with these people. I just can't. Okay, the next one. Actually, a lot of people know about the next one. I swear to God, this guy turned his head and it just creeped me out a little bit. Fredward, what you doing? Okay, the next one is Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. Bind, torture, kill, whatever. Known as the BT killer, Dennis Rader used to break into his victims' homes in and around Sedgwick County, Kansas, and stalk them before making his move. He would then bind, torture, and kill, BTK, them, which is where he got his nickname from, according to the Wichita Eagle. He killed 10 people between 1974 and 1991, but he wasn't arrested until 2005. Once apprehended, police searched Rader's home and found photos of Rader with his victims. Rader was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder and is now serving 10 consecutive life sentences at El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. That's where the motherfucker belongs. For real. And that's a case that's more popular. A lot of us do know about the BTK killer. Oh, my eye. Excuse me. This one I can hardly pronounce, but we're going to try to do it. Oh, I need to show you a picture of Dennis Rader. You guys probably know what he looks like already. That's Dennis. BTK. POS. Uh-huh. All right. The next one is Issei Sagawa, the Japanese cannibal who still walks free. He was a cannibal. Mm-hmm. Yep, he ate people. I'll show you his ugly mug, too. Yeah, for real. The famous Japanese cannibal is notorious in his country. He grew up in a wealthy family but always had the urge for human flesh. Always. His whole life he had that urge. At 23, Sagawa was arrested for attempted rape, according to Culture Crossfire. He entered the apartment of a tall German woman living in Tokyo and attacked her. Police didn't realize he was actually attempting to eat her, even though he bit off a piece of her flesh. Sagawa, who is 5 feet tall, he's only 5 feet tall. He's a little fucking midget. Even I'm taller than him, and I'm like tiny. I'm 5'2". I would have whooped his ass. Anyway, later told Vice he was obsessed with taller Western women. Oh, good. He wouldn't have liked me then. At 32, Sagawa went to study literature in France, even receiving his PhD. It was there that he befriended a classmate at 25, a 25-year-old Dutch woman named Renee Hartvelt. The friendship proved deadly for Hartvelt, as one night in 1981, Sagawa invited her over under the disguise of working on a poetry assignment, but ended up shooting her in the neck and eating various parts of her body over a 2-day span. He was so obsessed with cannibalism, with eating, that he killed his own best friend. He actually loved her. They were best friends, but he needed to eat her. He attempted to dump the leftovers of her body in a lake nearby, but was caught in the act. He was held in police custody for 2 years before being deemed legally insane and deported back to Japan. Once in Japan, he was declared sane by psychologists and signed himself out of the mental institution where he was being held. He currently lives as a free man in Japan, even though he fucking ate a bitch. And not the way we like. He ate her. Okay, so that is the 10 gruesome murder cases you probably never heard of. We probably heard of a few of those. Some of those I haven't even heard of. How fucking creepy though, right? Like, what the fuck? True crime stories. I mean, I love them. Don't get me wrong. But some of them, especially like Sylvia Likens, after I read shit like that, I gotta go box with the bag for a little bit so I don't fucking knock somebody out. It makes me mad. So mad. Look at Fredward. He's scared. He's like, oh, mama's getting pumped up. I better chill. Yeah, you better. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't take it out on Fredward. He's sweet. He's very sweet to me. So, that was our stories for tonight. 3 people had commented on my post talking about scary stories for tonight. And true crime was the first one. Paranormal was the second. And serial killers was the third. So tonight I did true crime. Next week, Sunday, I'm going to do some paranormal. I'm actually looking forward to that because I'm going to put some of my own things into it that I've experienced. Please don't think I'm crazy, but when you hear my stories, but just know that, yeah, these things actually happened to me. So, yeah. It's Sunday night. We're about to start a new week. It's 22nd. Oh, okay. Yeah. God, it's almost the end of January already. Holy shit. It's going so fast. My album comes out on Valentine's Day. I know that I say that like all the time, but it's because I'm so fucking excited. Super excited. Like, an album. I made an album. I'm fucking sick all the time, and I'm disabled most of the time, and I wrote an album and sang it and got an audio engineer and did all my things. I'm proud of myself. I'm tooting my own horn. Toot toot. Toot toot. Okay, so I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and I will see you all next Sunday. Love you.